Hello, welcome to the 1517 YouTube channel. This is Theology in 15 minutes or less. My name is Caleb Keith, and today I am joined by Adam Francisco. If you're new to these episodes or these shows on YouTube, know that they are connected to our full-length podcast called the Thinking Fellows Podcast, one of the longest-running podcasts of 1517. We're doing these quick topics, these quick rundowns, and then we're doing a full-length conversation over there on our podcast. Today, I'm joined by Adam Francisco, who is the director of our Scholar in Residence program at 1517. He's also a scholar in residence himself, does research and writing and podcasting on faith and reason, apologetics, history, church history, and a whole lot more. And today, he is going to give us, in 15 minutes or less, the Apologetics of Justin Martyr. Are you ready, Adam?
I am, though it's going to be hard for a historian to just speak on a topic for 15 minutes. We'll see how it goes.
I'll just hit stop on the recording if you you can't do it.
Yeah.
So the first question is sort of the opening question for all these types of things, which is just who is Justin Martyr? Who was Justin Martyr? Where is he located in church history for those who don't know, and why is he important?
Well, Justin Martyr is an interesting character because he's sort of a transition away from the era of what are called the Apostolic Fathers. These are the students, disciples of the apostles, and a move towards the early church fathers. He himself is an early church father, but he's especially remembered for being one of the early Christian apologists. There's a whole genre of literature that emerges in the second century that falls under the category of Christian apologetics. Born in what we today call the West Bank in a city called Nablus, or back then was called Flavia Neapolis. Raised in a Roman pagan household, converts to Christianity in his late teens, early 20s, it seems, so that'd be around 120, 125 AD, and by 165 AD, he's, along with some of his students in and around the city of Rome, are arrested, put on trial, found guilty of being Christian. They're beaten, and then eventually they're beheaded. He didn't write him autobiography, or there's no formal biography of Justin Martyr. We do have an account of his martyrdom. He gives us some autobiographical comment in his writing, and also the great church historian Eusebius in the early 4th century has several paragraphs on him.
So what are it sounds like there's a lot of challenges to Christianity at this time, but what are the most substantial apologetic challenges? Obviously, there's more than intellectual challenges, since people like himself are being martyred for the faith, but what are the intellectual challenges that cause him to sort of be a father of apologetics?
Well, the challenge from Judaism, of course, remains. It was there from day one. But, he moves to Rome, and while there are Jews and God-fearing Greeks who are kind of like converts to Judaism or monotheists influenced by Jewish theology, the challenges he mostly faces are the challenges from the Roman imperial machine and Roman culture, which it was routine in the 2nd century and later centuries, up until Christianity is legalized in the early 300s, to accuse Christians of being atheists because they denied the pantheon of the Greek and Roman, or the Greco-Roman gods. Common to think that Christians were or participated in some sort of cannibalism, because in their worship services, after the sort of public part of it, what we might call the service of the word, where scripture is read, a sermon is delivered, or some word of instruction is given, maybe a baptism is performed, then those who had not been catechized are released, and the doors are shut, both literally, or perhaps at this point symbolically, since there weren't church buildings yet. People met mostly in houses, but they would then celebrate the Lord's Supper, or the Eucharist. And as word trickles around, Christianity is still very much a minority religion. They hear that Christians are meeting at those times to participate in eating the eating
body
bread
and blood
and
of their
wine that
God.
is also the body and blood of this man named Jesus. And so accusations of cannibalism arise from there. They're also accused of being disloyal, or maybe like a fifth column in the Roman Empire. People who should be viewed with suspicion, as if they have sort of are working secretly to overthrow the Roman government. And then lastly, sometimes, and Justin Martyr will actually deal with this accusation, they're accused of engaging in like orgies and things when they're meeting secretly with their wives and their friends who they call brothers and sisters, and so it gets, the accusations, you can, if you think about them, you can understand why these accusations might arise. They seem very strange to us today, but it was very common back then. In fact, all the second century apologists have to deal with all of those things in one way or another.
What is the sort of, in addition to these external accusations, so you have sort of the atheist accusation from one particular set of religious groups, those with a pantheon, and then you have lots of accusations from Jews at the period too against Christians for sort of stealing or co-opting the Old Testament or something like that, as well. What's the difference between sort of fighting back against those and then dealing with the rise or the sort of the Christian heresies that pop up too, right? Because the early church is also characterized by, I guess, the clarification of doctrine, particularly around the person of Christ.
Yeah, well, so that's a big question, because sometimes apologetics and what we might call polemics, internal debates within Christianity, there's oftentimes a lot of overlap. But to make it easier, the work of Justin Martyr, he's primarily the material that we have from him. We have three extant pieces of literature that he wrote: a first and second apology, and then a dialogue with Trypho the Jew is what it's entitled. That may actually be not a transcript, but his recollection of a conversation he had with a man named Trypho who had some followers with him who were all Jewish. He did write some other things, it seems, but scholars debate whether they're the things that are attributed to him are actually legit or not. But Justin Martyr, as apologist, is dealing solely with those challenges to the Christian faith that arise from definitively with outside the Christian faith. But there will be, there already is at this time. Even the New Testament has traces, and maybe more than traces, of this. Think of the John's first letter is pretty clearly dealing with a heresy that's oftentimes called Docetism, which is, you could argue, is kind of part of an emerging Gnosticism. Irenaeus he's much younger than Justin Martyr. I think he was probably born, if memory serves me correctly, as towards the end of Justin Martyr's life. Irenaeus will write a work called Against Heresies by his death. He died around 202 AD. And in that, it's a very lengthy work, and it's kind of it's not the easiest thing to read, because he kind of goes into all sorts of goes down lots of rabbit holes and things, but and it's almost like he gets bored addressing all these heresies, so he starts making fun of them. But he's dealing primarily with these innovations that emerge within the broader umbrella of Christianity, in particular groups that are claiming or pretending to be Christians but have smuggled in other beliefs and in a kind of syncretistic way fuse them with Christian beliefs. So, but they're both essential tasks, and you see them throughout the course of Christian history. But just to make it clean, I usually would like to make the distinction that apologetics deals with definitive non-Christian questions and criticism of Christianity, whereas polemics or dealing with heresy is from within.
So there, as far as I know, there are no Greco-Romans running around persecuting Christians today. So what of his apology? Well, maybe. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, maybe not like not in the first century's way, but yeah.
His apologetic What from his apologetic is useful today, or is still important for those engaged in the apologetic task today?
Well, I think there's a lot of things we could talk about here. You've only given me 3 minutes, so let me just throw a few things out there. One is, I think his disposition and willingness to pay attention to the accusations and criticisms and questions the prevailing culture had of Christians and address them at the highest level. So, for example, his first and second apology, they might, some scholars argue that they're part of the same work. The second apology is just an addendum to the first, but no need to worry ourselves about that. But he addresses the emperor's sons, and the whole Roman Senate. So he's writing to like the guy who makes all the decisions, and in addition to giving a, if you will, arguing for the truthfulness of Christianity, a bulk of his time, at least in the first part of the apology, is he's explaining to the emperor and the senators like what Christianity actually teaches and practices to help explain why these weird rumors are circulating about incestuous orgies and cannibalism and so on. So just that willingness to actually to deal with that, even knowing full well that while Antoninus Pius, the emperor at his time, and then Marcus Aurelius after him while they are part of this group of emperors, 5 emperors who are sometimes called the 5 good emperors, they were also rabid persecutors of Christians. So even though he knows he's putting his name and his life on the line, he's still willing to stand up and be a voice of reason for Christianity. So that's a big takeaway for me. Another one would be his in his dialogue with Trypho the Jew. That is, I think, still today worth reading because it answers the Jewish accusation, though it's not put this way by Trypho, and I think a lot of other groups since then have kind of embraced this sort of accusation that Christianity is just some sort of innovation from the first century. Paul invented it by fusing, Jewish monotheism with Greco-Roman polytheism or something like that. And what Justin does in his dialogue with Trypho the Jew, is his longest work, is he shows that there's this continuity between what Christians believed in the first and in his century, the second century, all the way back to Adam, Abraham, all the patriarchs and the prophets, that Christianity in a way is not something that emerged in the first century, but was the faith, maybe we could call it the religion, though maybe not in name, of the patriarchs and prophets. So that, I think, is quite helpful in our thinking about the place of Christianity in world history. He also, one more thing I'd add, in Justin's work, the first apology, we get the earliest pretty comprehensive description of what Christians do at worship. And especially a pretty comprehensive explanation of what we'd call the service of the sacrament, the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper. So and all the way back then, not more or maybe about a century after the New Testament is written, you get an early church father espousing the doctrine of real presence in the Lord's Supper.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah,
well, there you go, guys.
I think so.
That is Justin Martyr in 15 minutes or less. We hope you enjoyed this video. Seriously, if you're looking for more, we've got more over at the Thinking Fellows podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcasting app. Over there, we have full-length conversations, about 45 minutes to an hour on these topics with a couple of other people from the 1517 Fellowship usually involved. Go subscribe there, and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel to find out more. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye.